everybody, I'm Beebs Kelley and welcome back to another fashion edition. Thank you so much for joining me. As we previously discussed in depth, the Meg and Harold looked very unprofessional on their private but highly publicized trip to Nigeria. There were really big fails on multiple fronts. If you missed the videos on it, I will link the playlist for you here and in the description box as well. But when it comes to fashion, there were such egregious crimes. It's not an issue of taste or different style aesthetics or preferences. It's not an issue of that at all. The Meg looked incredibly out of place because she chose the wrong outfits for the occasion and location. You know it, we all know it. So let's take a look at some examples of people in similar situations. People who have traveled to Nigeria in similar capacities. Harry and Meghan were not there in an official royal capacity or an official capacity at all. They were there privately and for Invictus business, allegedly. But Harry was part of the royal family, and some aspects of their trip tried to emulate the royal tours that have previously taken place all over the world. But there have been royal tours to Nigeria, which is what we're going to look at today. What did ladies who went to Nigeria wear when they were there to do charity sort of events that were publicized? Princess Diana, the late great Queen Elizabeth II, Princess Anne, the Princess Royal. These three ladies have been to Nigeria and done similar events and similar style of trip that Harry and Meghan tried to emulate. I want to make it clear that I'm not saying that they were there in a royal capacity because they weren't and thus should have dressed like they were. That's not what I'm saying. Obviously, Meghan and Harry went there as non-royals. However, they did try to act like they were royals. They clearly used a royal template, and regardless of that, they did publicize this trip heavily. Therefore, it is a great point of reference to see what actual royal tours of the country have looked like in the past in terms of fashion choices. Let's take a look at some of these alternative options and compare them to what the Meg chose. Are there advantages to what Meghan chose or disadvantages to what the royals have previously worn to Nigeria in the past? Let's begin with the 1956 royal tour of Nigeria with Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. Here she has this beautiful peach evening gown. I absolutely love this with opera gloves. This is so gorgeous. It would be beautiful to see on someone today. It's a floor-length gown. It is sleeveless here. And it has a V-neck, but there's no cleavage, there's no slits happening, and she does have the opera gloves on. Ooh, I really quite like this one. It's got a slight sweetheart neckline and short sleeves. So the neckline is, again, it's up higher, there's no cleavage showing, there's no slit. It's a below-the-knee skirt here. A very similar silhouette on this day, short sleeves. This one has a slight V-neck situation with a little bow right here, but again, it's not cleavage showing or bearing here, and still below the knee. Here she has a sleeveless design. I don't know what it looks like from the front, but I doubt it has any cleavage showing. She was not one to show cleavage ever. This one is one of just a couple of sleeveless designs, but still no slits in the skirt. It's a longer below the knee skirt. Also, most of her skirts are fuller, clearly have a couple of layers to them where they're not clingy, where you can really see her figure underneath. It just reins in at the waist. This one is a more straight silhouette, short sleeves again, less volume to it. So across all of her looks, she only had 2 sleeveless looks, but they still had a lot of fabric across the top part of the shoulder here. Everything else was short sleeve, below the knee or longer, and only one of them did not have a fuller skirt and was a little bit more straight, but still it was clearly a stiff fabric. It didn't cling to her or show her figure per se. Overall, it looks like her outfits were very on par for the 50s styles and silhouettes that we saw, which I really, really liked. I loved those outfits. Next up, let's take a look at Princess Diana and Prince Charles's royal tour to Nigeria in 1990. Here you can see Princess Diana is wearing a very modest dress. It's a high neckline. It has longer sleeves that are at least elbow length, maybe 3/4. And the skirt is very much below the knee. This dress is not figure hugging at all. It doesn't rein in at the waistline even. And there are no slits across the front at least. There might be a slight slit in the back to allow for better movement while walking, or a kick pleat perhaps, but overall this was a really modest choice. It also has these bright colors. This bright pink and white floral pattern is a great choice for the area. Next up, she wore this beautiful blazer dress of sorts. I quite like this one. It's got long short sleeves, meaning they are elbow length sleeves. It does have a V-neck, but again, there's no cleavage here. And it's not a slit across the front. Like you can see, it's a wrap style, but there's no slit. There's no leg above the knee on display here, and it is a knee length dress. Here she has another really modest green, light green number. It's a high neckline, longer sleeves, long skirt. Almost all of Princess Diana's outfits on this tour were incredibly modest. I mean, look at this one. It's great, perfect option. It's sort of, this one here sort of plays to the almost like safari style of vibe here, which is kind of fun, but it's still very much her own. I like that it reined in at the waistline. We have sort of cap sleeves. This is the shortest we've seen her sleeves so far, and her skirt is knee length, but I mean, it's still covered. She's still fully covered here. She's not wearing shorter sleeves and a deep V-neck or a slit in her skirt. Princess Diana was really quite masterful at choosing classy, respectful options. She was never wearing anything that was like, gee whiz, is that appropriate? With a handful of exceptions. There was a couple of evening gowns she wore early on that were maybe a little too revealing across the décolleté or didn't quite have the coverage that she needed, but those were some early mistakes. By this point, she was very well practiced in choosing things that were appropriate for the occasion. This is the most skin that we see her in. It is a twist top, almost like a halter neck style top here. I really don't like this for her though. It's very clunky. It feels very cluttered right here, too heavy right here. But you can see she has her shoulders exposed and her arms. While that might seem like a lot for this particular location or venue, this was an evening thing. This was a sort of evening reception. So it was an evening gown by Catherine Walker. And although her shoulders and arms are exposed, there is no slit, and it is not a super slim silhouette throughout the skirt. It has a slightly fuller skirt. There's a slight flare to it. So it's not revealing in any other manner. It's not tight. There's no slits. It's not short. It's just the shoulders and arms. So I feel like that was kind of skirting the boundary of what would have perhaps been a little bit too much for this occasion, but it was still acceptable because she balanced it out by the rest of the dress being more conservative. And it was still for an evening event. So this didn't take place in the middle of the day. This was not a luncheon. This was an evening reception. So that is the one occasion where evening gowns typically do have a little bit more shoulder or arm showing a lot of the time. In 2001, the Princess Royal also went to Nigeria on a 6-day tour. And she, of course, was dressed conservatively the entire time. She had high necklines, she had below the knee skirts, and she had slightly longer sleeves the majority of the time. She did not opt for anything sleeveless in the pictures that I could find during her tour. In 2003, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip returned to Nigeria for the annual Commonwealth Heads meeting. And of course, at this point, Queen Elizabeth was a grandma. She was not wearing anything revealing. The entire time, from what I saw, she had longer sleeves. She wore her sort of uniform she had established at that point of skirt suits and coat dresses and those sorts of styles. So that was very on par for the Queen Elizabeth styles that we all remember being so iconically her. In 2006, Prince Charles stopped by Nigeria during a tour of West Africa, but then in 2018, with Camilla, at the time Duchess of Cornwall, now Queen Camilla, and look at what she wore here. This was such a perfect option. This was very respectful. It was a nod to the culture. I really quite like this on her. It was a pretty color. If Meghan had opted for a style like this, it would have been really advantageous to her. Even just one of the days, wearing something like this in a color scheme that she preferred, it would have really boosted her PR. It would have really sent a completely different message. This is another option that Queen Camilla wore. She was opting for tunic length tops, longer sleeves, no cleavage showing. Higher necklines are ones like this that were a slight v-neck, that were buttoned up a little bit higher. This just looks very professional. It looks very respectful, and it's cool in terms of keeping your body cool. This allowed her to wear light colors in flowier fabrics that would allow a bit of a breeze and allow her to stay comfortable in the heat. And this was November when they visited. Here she's wearing a more fitted dress, but as you can see, it has longer sleeves, a longer hemline, a scoop neckline that is not low. You can tell that she opted for a lot of those lightweight fabrics that just allow more breathability. When there's a breeze, it really cools you down nicely. This also allowed her to stay protected from the sun and not get sunburned all the time. This is another style that really nodded to a more traditional dress of the area. And these are things that she can rewear on tours of other places that have similar culture in terms of customary styles worn by females in the area. Anytime she travels to a country that has similar style needs or customs, then she can draw from this wardrobe and wear these similar garments there. She already has them. So they were a great investment for her in terms of what she is doing with her life's work, being able to build a wardrobe that she can wear in hotter places and places where modesty is more respectful. Now, when you compare that with some of these options that Meghan Markle wore, it really brings forward just how revealing Meghan Markle's clothes were in comparison to all these other royals who visited. Now, again, I'm not saying that Meghan Markle is a royal. She has left the royal family. She was there in a private capacity. But she could have drawn on the same styles or similar styles to these other ladies in order to show respect and to just come across better. By wearing the clothes that she did, she looked out of place, she looked foolish, and it was disrespectful to her host country. Whether you're a tourist or you're there in a more business or working capacity, or you're visiting a place where your family members live, it's smart to wear the clothes that are more customary and more appropriate for the culture, no matter who you are. But the fact that Harry and Meghan publicized this trip means that it would be even more important for her to dress respectfully. Had they not publicized this trip, if they had put these pictures up on their private Instagram as private people, and they were not there for Invictus and did not publish pictures in the press and had a media member there and didn't publicize the trip the way that they did, then it wouldn't matter. It would just be a dumb tourist moment. But they did publicize this, which means that you're looking at it through this lens of public figure, in which case dressing more like these royal family members did would have given her so much better of an impression, not only to the people she was meeting and the country there, because she would be showing respect, but also to the public observing it. It looked so out of place. It was almost jarring seeing her waltz in a spaghetti strap dress for a talk like this, for a panel discussion, which would look weird in any country, but it looked especially strange to people watching this and to people consuming the news on this because it's so out of place. It's so tone deaf. It's such a weird choice. There's no way around it. Similarly, the sleeveless and back cut out, bare side, threatening side boob at a school. In any country, that would be ridiculous. But in this country especially, it's borderline offensive. The palm print dress with a very high slit and spaghetti straps just simply didn't suit the occasion. It didn't suit the venue. She stood out like a sore thumb in a bad way, and she was wearing something that furthermore was not appropriate for the place. There are a lot of reasons why people continue to compare Harry and Meghan to the royal family standards. One such reason is simply because Harry and Meghan keep positioning themselves in this faux royal light, the way they did with this tour. As we discussed, they followed the royal template in some ways. A lot of the visits that they did, they were trying, despite failing in most ways, they were trying to make it look like a royal tour. And because they were trying to do that and frame it that way, then we're immediately going to look at what they're wearing and the way they're acting from a more diplomacy-focused lens. And Meghan and Markle were not very diplomatic, and the clothes that she wore were very unprofessional and culturally insensitive. And this just illustrates that further. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I cannot wait to read the discussion there. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it at least somewhat interesting or entertaining to watch. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to click the like button and hit the subscribe button as well. It's completely free and it will help make sure you do not miss any upcoming videos. Thank you so much for joining me again. I hope you have a happy day ahead and I will see you next time. Bye.